There we go. Thank you. Now I will call the Town Planning Advisory Committee meeting to order on this Monday, December 16th. The first thing we will do is acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We also acknowledge that people of African descent have been in Nova Scotia for over 400 years. We honor and offer gratitude to those ancestors of Mi'kmaq and African descent who came before us to this land. We have the agenda in front of us. I would look for a motion to approve the agenda by Councillor McGrath. Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you. Ms. Lanchel. Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda as circulated signify by saying aye. Aye. Any contrary minded? Motion carried. We have our minutes before us from our November 25th, 2024 meeting. We have noted one change to Ms. Langel's title, just as vice chair, but aside from that, are there any other changes that the committee would like to see in the minutes? And if not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as circulated? Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Seconder? Thank you, Ms. Delorier. All those in favor of approving the minutes as circulated, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you. So the first development on the agenda this evening is 60 Juniper Street, and I will remind the committee as well as anyone in attendance that this application is at step 3 of the expanded process of the development agreement process. So in this meeting, the Planning Advisory Council would typically make a recommendation to Town Council. I do understand from speaking with staff today that the applicant wishes to make, I understand, a deferral, make a request for a deferral to the Planning Committee. Would one of you like to come to the microphone to speak to the committee? So just to give a little bit of an overview as to what is being requested and what the committee can or I guess may do with the information provided from the applicant. So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Planner Connolly, is that we have a full application. There is nothing outstanding in terms of what the committee has asked for. I understand that staff has provided a recommendation to the committee. I understand from the report provided to us that at this time staff has recommended that the application be denied. So I understand typically that would mean that that recommendation was provided to council, and then if another application was to be brought to the committee, it would need to start the process again. So it is not to say that this committee could not defer the application, but at the same time, I think the committee would like to recognize the process, and typically a deferral for a complete application would not be usually asked for, because I think most of the issues probably would have been provided and discussed with the applicant in advance. So that is not to say that the committee cannot provide the deferral to the applicant, but I just wanted to open up the agenda item with sort of a discussion of where we are, because this is not typical that we would have a request for a deferral at this stage. So as a committee, we could make a decision to hear Planner Connolly's report. We could make a decision to also hear from the applicant, and we could make a decision to hear from all of these members of the public who have come to the meeting this evening. Alternatively, we could decide that if we are going to defer and the application will be, fundamentally changed, maybe this evening is not the time to hear from all those people and spend a fair bit of time discussing things if there won't be a decision made this evening. So that is not for me to decide, it's for the committee to discuss. And Planner Connolly, if you wish to add anything to what I've said, or Senior Planner Fox, then you can. But otherwise, if any committee members want to add to that or ask questions of anyone, please do so. I see Councillor Graham in the queue.
I would like to suggest that we do hear from the developer on their wishes for deferral. However, I don't speak on behalf of the committee. It's just my preference that we hear from them.
Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with Councillor Graham. I believe we should hear on the deferral first. As you mentioned, if we spend a lot of time going through something that may be deferred, it's probably a better spent time to hear about the deferral first.
Is anyone on the committee of a different mind, or shall we hear from the applicant? Okay, I will take that as your approval to go ahead. And if you wouldn't mind, sorry, this is my first time working with that mic, so yeah, there you go. I'm going to give the mic to you. Thank you.
Okay, looks like it's working. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the PAC, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Ross Grant. I'm representing the applicant at 60 Juniper Street. So the reason that we're asking for the deferral is after having a chance to review the staff report for this step of the file, we feel there's further opportunity to circle back with staff and discuss key issues on this application. We'd like an opportunity to do that so that we can revise the proposal and really work with staff and the committee on getting to a point where what we'd really prefer is a positive recommendation from staff and being able to work with committee on moving forward with something that the committee is also comfortable with. So really asking for that deferral is just to give us an opportunity to really go back with staff, have a discussion on some of the issues that are listed in this report, and then bring something forward that everybody's comfortable recommending and working with.
Thank you. Just for the benefit of the committee, are you in a position to provide us with some information as to what you are planning on? We've read the report. We've also read the public engagement comments. So can you provide us with some information on what you're looking to revise?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think really what we'd be looking to do is talk through those issues with staff. I think we need more time to sort of evaluate what changes would be needed that would get us to a positive recommendation with town staff. So I don't have any specifics at this time other than to say that we're looking to collaborate and just really have a discussion where we can look at what we would need to alter in order to sort of work with staff on getting a positive recommendation.
Councillor Graham.
It's wonderful that you're interested in speaking with staff, but a vital component of this proposal even being considered to advance and to receive a positive endorsement from this committee and indeed from council, I believe it is the wish of council and everyone, or many in this room, that consultation be more fulsome with the residents of West Prince Street. And I think that relationship, if we were to consider, again, it's my view only, that relationship must be more formalized in a very formal way. And so the relationship doesn't just exist between the developer and council and the developer and staff. That relationship is key, that it's between the residents of West Prince as well. Is there a willingness there?
Thank you. Yeah, so I think if the committee sounds like it would be interested in potential further engagement, then certainly we'd be willing to do that. Yeah.
Maybe you could just, on Councillor Graham's point, speak to the public engagement sessions. I expect you were in attendance?
Sorry, the past public engagement sessions?
Oh, I misunderstood. Have there not been any public engagements?
There was, yes. There was
Okay.
two sessions. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so as I recall, the primary issues that were discussed were stormwater management and flooding concerns. There was concerns about access off of Prince Street. And in fact, in the most recent iteration that we've provided to the town, that access was removed. So that's showing certainly we're trying to work with community on the concerns that we heard. So the access to the development's now been planned to come off of Juniper rather than Prince. We also were working with town staff on a request for a stormwater management plan, which we've provided a preliminary version of, and I believe town staff have reviewed. And that plan, again, was meant to respond to those concerns. It actually resulted in a fairly significant reduction in stormwater flows off the site. So we certainly took the advice that we heard from those engagement sessions and tried to respond to that in the best way that we could. So if there's further ways that we can hear from community and ways that we can alter the development that would, further help community, I think we're willing to do that. We tried to, again, respond to those in the most recent iteration the best that we could.
Just on the traffic, you mentioned, because I believe the application still shows the opening onto Prince. Can you confirm you have the easement with the property to your east, I believe? Not east, north? I believe you're looking for an easement from the property to the north?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so the drawing that's in the current staff report, that was the older version, and we do have the easement, so it would be accessing through Juniper Street, not off of Prince Street.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to add on to what Councillor Graham said. When she said that is her opinion, she does not speak for the committee, so I thought I would add my opinion that yes, more community engagement needs to happen. I'm used to sitting here looking out at empty chairs. Look around you tonight. There's far more seats filled than not. We've got people standing at the back, which I invite to come and sit down, take a load off if you wish, but clearly there's, and I see people who I recognize here from West Prince. It's critical that their input be considered in this.
Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, this question is directed to Mr. Fox as the town planner. From looking at the application, the development seems to comply with all the land use requirements for the zoning, including the height, the mass, the setbacks, the lot coverage, amenity space, and parking. There's some question about entrance and exit of the property, and now we've heard that that is to be addressed on Juniper Street. However, according to our policy, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, where it seems to fall down is in the area of compatibility. And it's thought that it's just not compatible with adjacent land uses. And also the question of, when it comes to policy, we do have policy regarding neighborhood stability and heritage preservation. And I see that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that what we're talking about here? We're not talking about flooding, mitigation, and all that, because it seems to be, has been addressed. It meets the criteria for height and mass, et cetera, for zoning. Now, considering neighborhood stability and heritage properties, et cetera, that's where this judgment comes in. Is that what we're looking at here? We're looking at changing the height of the building to be more suitable, that sort of thing, because it seems to meet all the technical requirements of the zoning.
You are correct. I believe those are the issues. Again, this is not my file. It is Carla Connolly's file. So she is the planner who reviewed the application. But yeah, that's my understanding from the read of the report, and the recommendation was that the key issues here are around compatibility issues.
So those are a little bit softer in a sense, and I think that's where this discussion with the community needs to be had and come to some sort of agreement. And I do believe that I'm very open to come to some agreement between, you know, something that's 5 stories and not compatible to something that is maybe lesser or more compatible in some way. And I'd like to hear, as being stated, I'd like to hear what the feedback of the community is what you as a community believe is more compatible. You know, the land has the right to be, the owners of the land have the right to develop that land. The question is how will it be developed? And your involvement will help decide how compatible it is in regards to the historic nature of the Black community, also to the, you know, the size and mass of the building relative to being right beside a residential single home property. So I think that's the issue, and I think that the recommendation that there be some discussion is a very good recommendation, and I think that that issue has to be solved, and I think the committee here is interested in seeing that solved in some way. It is a policy of council to consider those things, you know, heritage properties, the value of those to the heritage of the town, and also the stability of neighborhoods, that neighborhoods are stable going forward, that they're not so stressed that people don't want to live there anymore, you know, and that's an important aspect of any planning. So that's how I feel about it.
One suggestion I could make to you as well, this committee reviewed the Stanfields project, and, you know, we've seen this one come through, and I haven't seen any of the drawings or designs change. And what I felt was really effective in the Stanfields project was they provided us with views of the development from the street, from every angle, because I would expect the members of the community would be very interested to learn or see in advance what this development will look like, not as a image with only white, you know, boundaries along the ground. I mean, it needs to show what it will look like in real life. So you can look at the Stanfields project. It's on the website. I'm sure you have access to that type of software, but I think that would be, it can serve to be helpful to, you know, have people see what something will really look like so that it maybe doesn't appear as scary as they thought it might be. So that would be a suggestion of mine. Anyone else in terms of what the application or the community engagement should look like? Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have in front of me the permitted uses in the regional service zone. I understand this is one of the more permissive zones. I don't live on the island, but if something like this was proposed near me, and if I lived near that regional service, I would think, what would I want to see there? You know, and I look at things like, you know, a veterinary hospital, that might be really nice to have. An animal hospital, I could bring my dog there. I'd be really happy, you know, very convenient to have one nearby. I would be far less likely to want utilities and public works next door to me, you know, or warehousing, or, you know, there's a lot here that this could be. So I really do encourage the community and the developer to work together. Obviously, we need housing these days. I'm hoping that we can see some more housing come out of this. But again, it's a matter of what the community wants to see there. You know, do we want to see some more residential expansion? Do we want to see some more commercial expansion? Again, I don't want to put my views on anybody. Maybe a gas station is needed in that area and the community wants to see that. I don't know. But I really think it's imperative that those conversations happen.
Just to bounce off of Councillor McGrath's comment, as some of you may not be aware, there are developments in our municipal planning strategy that are as of right, and that means that they can go forward without this process being undertaken. So what Councillor McGrath is saying is he, and I don't think he's purporting to speak for everybody, but what he thinks is wise is for us to take this opportunity to look for a development that might suit the community better than what may be permitted as an as-of-right development, such as warehousing or something which may not be quite as useful, or, not to put down the warehousing people, but that's what he's getting at. Okay. So we have some people in the in the what's the word, gallery, who would like to speak. Angie, will we use a microphone? I think that would be helpful. So I would ask people, if you don't mind, to please introduce yourself so that you can be on the record, and thank you.
Yes, my name is William Talbot, and I'm the counselor for Ward 1, but I just wanted to point a couple of things out. Number one, there's no need to guess what the community concerns are because they've been submitted in writing. So you have the community concerns. And the counselor's Thomas point, the community is not accepting some of the things. From the feedback the community give me, they do not see it as a neighborhood fit. So, I just want to make sure that the conversation proceeds on the right track. I can't say a lot because I will have to vote on this. I have to keep an open mind on it, but I want to make sure that we're dealing with the facts. And we don't need the PAC to guess what the community's concerns are because they submitted them in writing.
Thank you, Councillor Talbot. We do want to give people the ability to speak to the committee directly, though, so I appreciate your comments, and I think everyone has read what's been submitted, but I don't think we want to give the message that people can't speak if they didn't submit something online.
Good evening, good evening. So yeah, I just got some words written here. I'm going to read from my phone real quick, but good evening, members of the Planning Advisory Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Trevor Jordan, and I am representing the West Prince Street Working Committee regarding the proposed development at 60 Juniper. So Wayne Talbot just kind of came forth and mentioned a few of the things that I'm going to speak about, but I'm going to read from the phone here. The community has previously submitted an outline of our concerns to the staff and local councilors, and we appreciate the chance to further elaborate on those concerns here tonight. So number one, we have preservation of community integrity. The proposed development threatens the last intact black community in the town of Truro. We have already witnessed the loss of the Hill and the Marsh as cohesive black neighborhoods, and this development risks further eroding our community. This is not simply about construction, it is about protecting a culture and a historical identity that has deep significance to our town. Number two, historical and cultural significance. The neighborhood is historically significant to Truro. While the town has preserved heritage buildings, it is vital to extend the same protection to the historical black communities. The continuous loss of history, heritage, and landmass has left the community fighting to maintain its presence. Once stretching to Gulf Street, this neighborhood deserves respect and preservation as part of Truro's cultural fabric. Number three, I have environmental and structural concerns. The proposed development raises serious environmental and structural issues. Flooding, this area is the lowest point in Truro. It is highly prone to flooding. We would need a robust stormwater management plan, and it must be implemented before any decision should be made. The building size, the scale, and the height of the development are inconsistent with the neighborhood, creating problems with shadowing and sight lines, and traffic and safety. So increased traffic and parking demands will disrupt this area and create safety concerns, especially on Prince Street, a dead-end road traditionally used by children as a safe place. And then in my last point here, I just say community engagement. The neighborhood committee is not opposed to development, but it must be responsible and involve meaningful consultation with our community. The community would be more open to a scaled-down version of the development alongside concessions that address these key concerns. Genuine collaboration is essential to ensure that development enhances rather than diminishes the neighborhood. In closing, this decision is not about, this decision is about more than approving a development. It is about preserving the history, integrity, and quality of life of a longstanding community while balancing the town's growth. On behalf of the neighborhood committee, I urge the PAC to carefully consider these concerns and support the community's efforts to protect its future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath, you're in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Talbot and Mr. Jordan, for your comments. Should we take a vote on whether or not we're going to defer this before we hear further comments? Not to dismiss anybody's comments. We certainly want to hear from everybody. I think we've made it clear that the community engagement is important, but tonight may not be the place for that if this development as presented is not going to be going ahead, if we are going to accept that deferral.
Yeah, I would support a vote regarding deferral. It's the developer that has come forward and said they'd like to defer the project, and I'd like to respect that and see what happens in the process, you know, in consultation with the community, which they've agreed to participate in. So I think we should just vote on it, you know. There's no point, as the councillors suggested, what's the point of discussing something that might not be or will not be?
Councillor Graham.
Oh, there. Madam Chair, could you please remind myself and the room about the consequences or the process that would follow a deferral on this application? I know you said it in your opening remarks, but could you remind me?
And I mean, I don't know if I'm an expert on it, because it's not something that I, since have been on the committee, we have faced, but my understanding from speaking with staff is a deferral is basically what it sounds like. It's sort of, let's pause this, let's come back at another meeting, and let's continue in step 3, presumably with some changes made in the meantime in consultation with Planner Connolly and the community. And I think the concern of staff and the committee, which is, I think there is some merit to it, is that we as a committee may not want to permit deferrals. Now, in this case, we may, you know, given what we've discussed this evening, but it might set a precedent that really the process doesn't, if it's not followed by an applicant, which, you know, at this point we're at step 3, they've had opportunity to meet with the community, meet with the planner, come before this committee. I believe we have never had this many, you know, people from the applicant. So I am of the opinion that we certainly can defer, and maybe it's the right decision, but I think we also do want to send the message to the applicant that, you know, this committee has put our time into this. We've provided our comments. Councillor Connolly has spent a lot of time. Members of the public have been engaged in this. And so we hope that next time, if we give you this one more chance, that something will come back that addresses the concerns that have been raised. That's what I would say.
Well, as I mentioned in my initial comments, that I think that relationship between the committee, or between the community and the developers, absolutely must be formalized moving forward. What that formalization might look like, it's not for me to decide. It would be up to the community to decide, but it is my opinion that that absolutely must be formalized.
Planner Fox?
Yeah, I just wanted to add as well, the question of the deferral is somewhat of a concern to me as well, as far as sort of in the process, going through this process. We are at step 3. The other option that is available is a refusal of the application or agreement with staff's recommendation to refuse the development agreement. And because what we'd be looking at here, in order to bring this into conformance with the town's policies in the opinion of staff, would be some fundamental substantive changes to the design of the proposal. So that would essentially mean we're looking at what is fundamentally a new application. So I'm almost sort of leaning towards my recommendation that the committee consider refusing the application, moving forward with that recommendation, and then what you'd be looking at is a new application coming back before the committee, having gone through a new round of consultation with the community.
Through a council hearing to deny that? Would we still have to go through that process?
It could still go through the process. The applicant could also decide to withdraw their application at this point as well.
Because we...
Not a deferral, but like they could withdraw rather than go through that process.
Just one moment there. We'll bring you a microphone.
I'm from the West Prince Street too, and I think we all should start speaking up a little more. But all I could hear you say is the town's policy, town's policy. You know, when it comes right down to it, it's going to be the town policy. But we're not going to let that happen. We're here to fight for our community. We've been here for a long, long time. And it took us a long time to be where we're at. And it's because the young people stood there, they did what they had to do to use their land. They got jobs. Now they're developing, making something of our community and themselves. And now it's being taken away from us. They took the back end of, they got the great big lights now behind this woman's house. She can't even sleep at nights. So once you get 1 foot in the door, we're going to be shut right out. We got the golf club on one side, baseball on the other side, something else on the other side. You know, let us live. They kept us down for 200 or 300 years old. This town was built by our ancestors with pick and shovel. You should know all this stuff. I am against it completely. And I think I might be the oldest one here, but I'm speaking from experience what our community and our families went through. Now, I don't know if anybody else wants to speak, but we have to start speaking up. Otherwise, we'll end up like Africville. I may not live long enough, but it might happen, and it will happen. They got the whole town, all kinds of property. Now they want to just shove us down in the brook and drown us. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi,
Thank you.
I'm Raymond Tynes, former town councilor. Been living in Truro for 74 years. I'm not going to get into all of the history, but you basically know it, the island, the hill, and the marsh. We've seen what happened with the hill. We've seen what happened with the marsh. The island, West Prince Street. We got to stop calling it the island. It's West Prince Street. But, well, Prince Street. And if it's not going to be called West Prince Street, well, that part of Prince Street doesn't look like the rest of Prince Street when it comes to sidewalk, pavements, and everything else. But they're paying just as much taxes. Again, I'm not going to go into the struggles and the fights because it goes back to the 70s when it really first come out on how they were trying to move the black people off the island. And there's a big history there. I am all for development in this town. But here's my problem. I've heard it said, we need housing, we need development. But when you're looking at $1,800 a month rent average, and the people that are struggling in small apartment buildings with even $900 a month rent, and these developers are coming in and buying them all up, that's why we got homeless encampments. That's why we got everything going. We need to look at this from a total perspective, I like the idea of what the developer has talked about. But as Mr. Fox has said, deferring it only means pushing it down the road. Take and withdraw the application. I think they should withdraw the application, meet with the community, and put forth a new application, because all this is doing is just the work that planning and everybody put into it. It's just a waste of time pushing it down the road. So I would suggest that the developer put forth a motion saying they're withdrawing their application, and then come forth and meet with the community and the planner to come up with something that would fit. That's all I have to say at this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Tynes. The applicant, would you, Mr. Grant, would you like to speak on behalf of the applicant as to whether you're still requesting a deferral, or whether there's been any discussion as to a change to your request for the committee?
Yeah, so, sorry, could I ask staff to remind us again? So essentially, if we defer, you're suggesting that the application would have to restart the process, just seeking clarity on that.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I think what essentially be doing is just restarting over from the beginning to make sure that the consultation takes place. I think we had issues with this process, trying to get consultation done earlier on in having meetings set up. It was a long time coming, and between when the application was made and when the app meetings took place, I think that needs to be handled better, and we need to do more thorough consultation. So I think what that means is if we start with a new application, because honestly, you're talking about probably some substantive changes to the current proposal in order to come back as a deferral as under the same application is probably a bit of a stretch.
We have a lengthy agenda. Could we give the developers some time to think about it and maybe move on to our next item? I understand it's a significant decision that they need to make. Is it reasonable to expect they make it on the spot like this? I don't know.
Sure, I don't have a problem with revisiting this specific. You can have a meeting outside the chamber.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Graham, for that suggestion. Councillor McGrath?
Just to clarify, Madam Chair, is the decision still being made tonight? We're going to proceed to our other agenda items and then revisit the 60 Juniper Street? Okay, thank you.
That's correct. Okay. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 4648 Ford Street and 2238 Rexdale Drive, a development at Step 2 from Wallace Retirement Living. Sorry, that is, the application briefing was prepared by Planner Fox, so we will hear from him.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an application for 2238 Rexdale Drive and 4648 Ford Street. This was before the committee earlier this year. In terms of a description of the application, this is an application by Wallace Retirement Living. It was made on the 13th of June, 2024. It is for a residential development consisting of 4 multi-unit buildings on land south of Marshland Drive at 4648 Ford Street and 2238 Rexdale. The proposal includes 2 6-story 50 to 55 unit buildings and 2 4-story 35 to 40 unit buildings. The total number of proposed dwelling units is between 170 and 190 units. As I mentioned, we are at step 2 of the process. Just 1 second here. So currently at step 2, this was back, as I mentioned, in step 1, back in, I think it was in August. It was before this committee. At that time, there was a few concerns additional requests for additional information at that time. The committee was looking for more conceptual design drawings, renderings of the proposal to get a sense of what it was going to look like, requests for more landscaping plans, and there was also requests for a stormwater management flood mitigation plan as well. So again, back in August, this was at step 1. So now we're looking at step 2. And then following step 1, we posted this on the town's website as well, the information, so that it was accessible to the public. So prior to this meeting, also, we had the applicant, as I mentioned, submit the detailed site plan, detailed renderings, some landscaping details, along with the flood mitigation and stormwater management plan. Those were submitted and will be discussed a little bit more later on in detail. So the 2 properties in question are outlined in blue, shown here. Ford Street is shown here. Cross Street is here. Rexdale's just off the bottom of the screen. Marshland Drive runs along the north side of the screen, the top of the screen. The 2 properties have a combined area of approximately 42,816 square meters, and there's about 10.3 meters of frontage on Ford Street, 25 meters of frontage on Rexdale, and about 298 meters of frontage on Marshland Drive, although there's no access permitted along this section of Marshland Drive for vehicles because it's a controlled access road. This is just a view of the subject property from the end of Rexdale Drive. And as I mentioned, this would be a view of 2238 Rexdale Drive, and Ford Street development would be off to the other side. This is an excerpt from the town's policy area map. It says future land use map. It should say policy area map there, showing the subject property's policy area designation, which is urban growth. There's also some general residential next door. Excerpt from the zoning map showing, the next slide here shows an excerpt from the town zoning map showing that the property is zoned urban growth, and also some general residential zoning around the property along Ford Street. There's also some environmental reserve on the property, which is the light blue, which follows a water course, and there's also a 1 in 20 flood overlay on the property. This is a site plan submitted by the applicant. Applicant has submitted a site plan showing a residential development proposal that consists of 4 multi-unit buildings. 2 of them are 4-story buildings and 2 are 6-story. The 6-story buildings would be situated here, closest to Marshland Drive, and also here on the, again, closest to Marshland Drive of these 2 buildings off of Rexdale. And as I mentioned, there's no vehicle access shown on the site plan from Marshland Drive. Access to the site is split. Half of it would be accessible from Ford Street, the other half from Rexdale. This is a rendering of the proposed development. This would be Marshland Drive running along the side of the screen here. So the buildings are situated in 2 groups with 2 of the buildings, buildings A and B are shown here. These would be the ones closest to Park Street Ford Street's right here, actually just off to the right of the screen, and Park Street would be over to the upper right-hand corner. Buildings C and D are situated off, they're not on this rendering, but they're actually situated on lands off Rexdale. The applicant has positioned the 2 higher buildings, the 2 6-story buildings at the north of the site, away from properties on Rexdale and Roby and to some extent on Ford, although it is building A, which is the 6-story building, is closer to Cross Street. This is another view showing buildings C and D, which are the buildings off of Rexdale. The proposal includes a mixture of surface parking. There's also some underground parking, will be main level parking, at-grade parking in interior. There's surface parking for 100 vehicles, plus another 24 spaces on the ground floor of each building, which works out to be about 1.56 to 1.74 spaces per unit. Buildings C and D have surface parking for 122 vehicles, which works out to be about 1.28 to 1.44 parking spaces per unit. And overall, there's 270 parking spaces on site with a ratio of between 1.42 to 1.56 spaces per unit. There's some more renderings that have been provided by the applicant, more detail of the finish proposed for the buildings. So this is just a conceptual rendering of building C, which is the building off Rexdale. And Another view of building C and D looking northeast towards Marshland Drive. This is another view of a view of, it says building A, but it's actually building D. Apologies. This is looking south from Marshland Drive. And what was submitted, and it's hard to read here, but I did circulate, was a memo about the stormwater management and also some detailed grading surface conditions of the site prepared by Design Point Engineering. So that's been provided as well. It was available on the website, but also copies of this have been circulated to committee members. So there is a flood mitigation plan and a stormwater management plan prepared by a licensed professional engineer. In terms of enabling policy, this is the policy that allows council to consider this application by development agreement, so it's policy UG 35. And then in terms of public participation, so a sign will be posted on the subject lands in the coming weeks. Information has been posted on the town's website under active development applications, and it has been updated regularly to reflect current information. It doesn't have the newest renderings, those just came in. It wasn't even in the staff report. But those will be added to the website. And then we'll also do a mail out pending the resolution of the postal strike. That should take place in January. So in terms of next steps, so as I mentioned, we're at step 2. At this meeting, committee members are expected to provide further direction to the developer regarding suggested changes to address public feedback and better conform to the town's planning policies and objectives. Also at this meeting, the applicant may commit to additional changes to address any feedback, better conform to the town's planning policies and objectives. And then once the applicant settles on a conceptual design, the application would proceed to step 3. And at step 3, that's when we do our online survey and prepare a staff report and recommendation, which is where the other application, the Juniper Street application is at step 3 tonight. The results of the survey along staff report will be presented at a third meeting of the committee, which is the step 3. That's likely going to be January 27th, and the committee will make its recommendation to council at that time, and then it would proceed to a public hearing. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Planner Fox. And I think we have Mr. Chisholm here from Wallace Retirement Living.
That's right.
Nice to see you. Anyone from the committee like to speak to Planner Fox's report, or should I give the applicant an opportunity to speak? Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, Mr. Fox, I was just wondering about, it seems to me in my reading of your report that that when it comes to the heights of the buildings, particularly the 6-story buildings, but also the 4-story buildings, do they meet all the building height zone requirements in relation to the abutting general residential zone? In other words, they have to be, so many feet from an existing property before they can exceed certain maximums in height. And it appears to me that they meet all those requirements.
Yeah, and I haven't prepared that detailed analysis at this point, so that would be done, and it is a development agreement, so it is all,
Right.
It's all negotiable, but that would be done as part of the staff evaluation at the next step.
Right, and I just want to make the comment that I'd like to see them meet those standards. That would be my request. And I think I'll hold, I have further questions, but I'll wait until after the developer has presented.
Councillor Graham?
So with this proposal, it seems inevitable that stormwater management is going to be a significant challenge for you. What is, in layman's terms, like, are you just going to build up to be successful? Like, it seems like the people on Ford Street will have a lot of concern for potential flooding there too, if it's not done extremely well.
We've retained Design Point Engineering to look, and there's 2 issues there. There's the flood mitigation, and then there's stormwater management, so there's sort of 2 different components. We've got a plan made for both of those. The stormwater management, which is what you addressed, would deal with issues such as set like ponds that would hold water when there's storm water, so it doesn't all flood out. Also, there's holding on, I think on the roof, there's other possibilities there of having roof storage. The entire building, like the cut and fill proposal that's there is one that's not going to change the topography of the water flow as it is currently. So it's designed to ensure that the water stays where it is now. And if there's going to be, you know, a certain number of feet of water in a certain flood, it would remain on that property. It would just be dug out lower in a certain area. It might be deeper there because the buildings are built up. So it's intended and designed, engineered in order to ensure that that doesn't affect the neighboring buildings.
So currently, I think those 3 yellow buildings that I see in that area, they're built on hills, right? Is that why it's been successful?
Yeah, well, as it turns out, we used to own those buildings, and that's why, that's right, they're built up just a matter of 3 feet or a couple of feet above the floodplain, and they've never flooded.
So will that be happening with this development
Yes.
as well?
Yes, when you saw the photos of the landscaping on the exterior, you could see that they were built up,
Wow.
and they're sort of retaining walls, and that was the design there. Yeah, so you can see that, and then others, I think there was one with, yeah.
So we're expecting that they will be built on hills and there will be retaining ponds? Is that what you're saying?
When you do I'm not an expert in this field at all, but it's
No.
a cut and fill idea, which is that you take ground from the site that you're on. So if you look at the Rexdale Drive property, you'll see there's quite a field between there and Marshland Drive.
Yeah.
So there'd be ground removed from there, and it would use, that ground on site would be used to build up where the buildings would be, to ensure that there's no flooding. So the amount of water that would be retained in the lot would be the same. And it ensures that the building doesn't flood because it's above the floodplain.
And through you, the chair, to Andrew, Mr. McKinnon, sorry, is that in keeping with our standard practices? Does that sound like reasonable flood mitigation and stormwater management strategy?
Yes, absolutely. That is the general concept of it all, the cut and fill on site. And also, when you're on the marsh itself, you have to worry about ensuring that the water flow during floods. If the water would normally, when the floodwaters recede, if they normally flow northwest, we would still want them to flow around these buildings northwest so that the water will disperse back off of Ford Street during a time of flood the way it always has.
Are you prepared at this time to comment on this development and stormwater management there, or are we too far out for your comments?
Well, we'll receive the stormwater management plan when it's done, and we'll review it and make sure it meets all of the criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor
I would like to hear from the developer before we ask them questions. I think that's what we normally do, and I'd like to hear his presentation, so I'm better. Do you have a presentation, sir?
Not a formal presentation,
Okay.
no. We just have the design point review that was submitted with our documents. We've got the engineering plan.
Right, I've seen all those documents.
Yeah, all those documents, and that's basically, as I indicated, I'm not an expert, I don't know
Okay.
this development business very well, so we've retained the people that do know it.
Okay.
And hopefully they're.
Well, I think it's to me, it's important to have the people here that know, because, we're building on a 1 in 20, two of the buildings are on 1 in 100. Two of the buildings are on 1 in 20.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 in 20 kind of, to be honest with you, scares me, 1 in 20, to build on a 1 in 20. 1 in 100, not so much, but 1 in 20, there's issues with building that. So I have a couple of questions for you. For instance, the driveways and the parking lots, will those be elevated to, 3.5 inches above the 1 in 100? Or will they remain at the natural level of the land that's there now?
Yeah, certain portions of as you say, the 1 in 20, some of the buildings and some of the lands, like the buildings are on the one, some of them are on 1 in 20.
Yeah, two of them.
Two of them are, and then.
A and B are 1 in 20, and C and D are, C and D are 1 in 20, and A and B are 1 in 100.
And the parking lots, I believe, are partially on both, so that beyond the 100, some
Right.
parts of the parking lot.
So
would be
that's
in the
why I was
20.
identifying just the 1 and 20, which
That's
are
right.
buildings C and D. The parking lot and the road leading into those off of Rexdale Drive, will those be built up to?
The roadway will be built, but the parking lots themselves, I think, are going to be at a lower level than the buildings.
Sorry, I'm just going to let Planner Fox interject
Sure.
for a moment.
Yeah, so I just wanted to confirm that the driveways and parking lots are not allowed to be flood-proofed in accordance with the town's policies. So the buildings only can be flood-proofed.
Okay.
Driveways and parking lots, no.
Yeah, okay, because that was important to me, because, that's obstruction, that would be an obstruction to the movement of water across the land. So I was interested in that, and thank you for that clarity, I appreciate that. When it comes to the cut and fill, I couldn't see from your report, because I too don't have the expertise, I don't have the expertise to read that properly. But I was just wondering about the amount of fill that you have to put into the 1 in 20 to bring it up to 3.5 inches above the 1 in 100 plane for any entrance into that building. So I don't know how much fill you are, and that interests me, because then I want to know how much cut you're taking. And so, if it's 6 feet, that's quite a bit of material to be removed as a cut from another part of the property. And I'm concerned about creating ponds, permanent ponding. And so I don't know if you can answer that, or whether I need to direct my question to the town engineer. I'm not sure.
My understanding is that the way it's designed currently is that the building itself would be on basically concrete stilts, like not very high, 2 or 3 feet high. So the cut and fill would occur primarily on the exterior of the building, sort of, so it's built up around the outside of the foundation.
I see, okay.
And that's my understanding of it.
Okay.
So
it's not such a mass of fill that you'd have to actually sit the building on a 6-foot elevation of
That's
material.
right. That's exactly right.
Okay, well, that's
how I
interesting.
understand it.
It doesn't say that in your report, and that's interesting, because, I'm trying to figure out how much do you have to cut. And, and that does make me imagine,
Sure.
a lot of ponding taking place
Yeah,
on the
no,
property.
that's a valid question and concern, I'm sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's important, I just might make a statement here, that it's important that the project include this flood mitigation, and that it doesn't contribute to either the upstream or the downstream volume of water. I don't want to see, and you've got properties upstream from this, and I know you don't want to see more water backed up upstream, but the people living downstream don't want to see any more water moving their way either, during a flood. I'm not so interested in the stormwater management, because I think that's very manageable. What I'm concerned about is those floods that the floodplain in Truro experiences. We haven't experienced them lately. I think the last one was probably, the big last one I can think of was probably 12 years ago or so, approximately. I can't remember, but exactly. But, they do occur. And when it does occur, I'm a little concerned about it. And this will be my last question for now. It's a retirement home. Is that the retirement living? That's the.
Yeah, no, this
So
isn't intended to be a retirement living.
it's not.
No.
That's
no.
good, because I don't want to see retired people stuck out.
Well, there may be a retired person in there, I'm not certain, but.
Yeah, that's right. That's not a
I
retirement
suspect there may be a
place.
few, but it's not a retirement home or assisted living.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think you do raise a good point, though, Councillor Thomas, which is people being stranded. So I think it is something, we talk a lot about water management. And of course, the building is your primary interest, but if we have people who are stranded, either can't get to their homes or can't get out of their homes, those are also things for the committee, I think, to consider. Councillor Thomas, just to expand on your questions, do you wish for Mr. Chisholm to have someone come before the committee to speak to their report?
Well, I think for it to be properly looked at as a project before it leaves this committee, I do believe that the committee should have some sort of understanding. And sometimes we wait until, and council will even approve something and say with a stormwater management. But I can't remember, and perhaps Mr. Fox can correct me, but I can't remember us really building on 1 in 20, 1 in 100, but the 1 in 20, and historically that property has not been developed because it has this potential for flooding, and so it's been left. But that doesn't mean that it can't be developed and developed properly with the proper technology applied to it. And as long as that's done, and I think the committee does, I believe, at least I would like some sort of satisfaction that the proper technology has been applied, and that this committee is considerate of those factors before it approves. You know.
Can you speak to that, Planner Fox, as to how much development the town does have in a 1 in 20 zone?
Yeah, we've approved a few. There's like the Stanfields development most recently, but
Yeah,
there's
but
also
that was more historic.
the end of Ford Street. There was a development proposal that went through, would have had some 1 in 20. The two buildings right next to this off of Ford Street would have had some 1 in 20 as well. So it does happen, and we require that they submit the detailed engineering plans,
Right.
and that we have that all gets reviewed internally by our town engineer's office, but also we would look for a stamped engineered plan showing how the flood proofing is going to be done properly with the balance cut and fill, and that all the foundations and all the minimum openings in the foundations are 9 centimeters above the 1 in 100 flood elevation. So all those things have to be met, and we wouldn't be recommending approval unless they are.
Right.
And they will be, again, would have to be signed by the engineer, and also would be reviewed internally by our Public Works Department.
Yeah, I guess with this project, like those other projects, portions of it are the 1 in 100. But those other projects, like the other one at the end of Ford Street, there was a corner of the property that was 1 in 20, if I remember. But the bulk of it was 1 in 100, if I remember correctly. Here we have a 4-story and a 6-story sitting on 1 in 120. So I think it does require some thought here, because I think it poses a risk to not only to you as a developer, it poses a risk, and so it's to your advantage to really know what you're dealing with, but also the people that live there and to their vehicles and everything else. So I feel a responsibility to know what I'm saying yes to. So, and I know I'm not an engineer, and so at some point I do have faith and trust in those with expertise, and I will just nod to their expertise. So, I don't have to learn it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's time, we're only at step 2, so there's time for you to provide that, I think, hey?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the next step would be the time when we would come up with a recommendation, though, so it's really just one more meeting. For those of us not on council. Okay, well, is there anyone from the gallery who has any comments on this development? Mr. Tynes?
Yes, used to be in Wallace's living. I live in one of the apartments that used to be Wallace Living. It's now owned by Viola or Avita or whatever. I remember when those buildings were built, and I can tell you, if these ones are going to be built like those ones are built, there are not going to be any issues, because when flooding took place, the way they were built, you had to get your cars moved out of there. And I remember the boats coming in, have to help people get out. But it was the cut and fill. The driveways were down. Those new ones that are built off of Ford Street, if you look at the back end where they park out back, they're lower than the buildings. So it's taken into consideration, like the stormwater management and whatever. But if there's going to be any concerns here, you keep looking at the developers or whatever. One of the biggest issues we had during my last bit of time on council, and it cost a lot of money because it was neglected for almost 40 years, was the dredging of the Salmon River. And it's been pointed out by Councillor Thomas, it was about 12, 15 years ago, but we haven't had that issue since we managed the dredging of the river. So that should be something that you should be looking at and making recommendations, because it's been quite a while. And I drive across that bridge and I look down there, and it's going to happen again. We can't put it all on the developer, but if he follows what what the policies are, and if his buildings are going to be anything like the ones I live in, it's not an issue, and it doesn't affect the other apartments around. If he was allowed to build up everything, I'd be the first one fight and say, don't let it happen. But let's just wait until the next round, was it round 3? And see what's proposed. And
All right.
I'll
Thank
make
you,
my
Mr.
comments then.
Dents. Thank you. You're going to be back up here in a couple of minutes. All right, Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question for the developer. Sorry, Mr. Chisholm, was it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And I apologize because I think, as Planner Fox said, I seem to have the presentation from step 1. I don't have this updated one for step 2. So maybe there have been some changes made that I didn't see, but I noticed when we talked about the parking, the illustration there on the screen, this is supposed to have surface parking under the building, correct?
Yeah,
This-
there are some parking underneath there as well, yes.
Not in this one?
Not-
Sorry, I
not
thought there was
totally, but
24 in each building. Did I miss
Some-
here?
So the building on the screen there would show a building that would have the ground floor parking, I believe.
So they don't all have the ground floor parking?
No, I think only
Just-
2 of them do.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought someone had said that each building had 24 parking spaces underneath. But there's a lot of talk about the vehicle parking. I don't see bicycle parking or any secure storage there. And I did a quick check on Google. From the end of Ford Street up to the Superstore on Elm Street is 650 meters. That is easily walkable, bikeable distance. Are you going to be adding any bicycle parking
Yeah,
storage?
absolutely, for sure.
So we'll-
Yeah, we'll have storage, we'll have bike storage, there'll be places for bikes for sure.
Okay, because especially when we're talking about flooding and the impacts of flooding, and the flooding is getting worse a lot because of climate change. So if we can give people more environmental ways to get around and safe storage of their bicycles, that'll hopefully make a dent in the long run.
Sure,
I don't think I have anything else right now for you, but thank you, sir.
thank you.
Mr. Chisholm, I'll just ask one question, and that is, in a lot of these renderings, there was a lot of trees. From my sort of, like, are those just put in the drawings? I don't think those are actual trees. Is that correct?
No, they're not, they're visuals, just to give you a concept as to what the space could look like.
Yeah.
It's going to be landscaped, obviously, and trees will probably, and shrubs will be part of the landscaping.
Yeah, I mean, shrubs and landscaping, I think, is one thing, but to put this number of trees, I would suggest is, it sort of sends, it gives us an image that isn't realistic. So I would like to see your renderings with, a bit more realistic flora, yeah.
It's,
So that we can see, what it's really going to look like. And I mean, this would be lovely in 40 years or 20 years, but it's nice to see how it integrates with the neighboring houses and neighborhoods and stuff. And
I expect there will be trees. I mean, there will be trees.
yeah, and I mean, if you want to put some small ones in, like the ones that would be realistic for sort of immediate, and that could ideally be part of the application. I think that's something that this committee would appreciate, but
Okay.
just those really large trees are
make
just,
a-
I think, giving us maybe a bit of a incorrect view.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yes. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name's
Yep.
it's Rod Higgins. I live at 54 Rexdale Drive, the last house in the left. It's just like living in the country down there. It is. You got the deer, you got the pheasants, you got everything down there. But I was a member of the Truro Fire Brigade for 30 years, and I remember the flood that those 2 apartment buildings are there. We had to take boats in there and get the elderly people out of there in boats. And yeah, and it will happen again unless they do something with the river again. And I've had 4 major floods on my property, and I don't want no more. And if they're talking about building driveways up, well, that just gives the water more place to run because the driveways are up higher. And not just the driveways, but they'll be building up around the houses, up around the apartments. And where's the water got to go from there? In my property.
Mr. McGilvery, just to reiterate what Planner Fox had mentioned, the driveways will not be raised, so that is actually something that is not allowed.
Tell you the truth, ma'am, I can't see that happening. I can't see the driveways not be built up with something. I don't know what it will be, but that land down there is nothing but swamp. Because my backyard, I'm the last house, and if I go out there, I can't take my 4-wheeler out there because it gets stuck. So that's my opinion on the development down there, and you can stand. The last flood we had, you could stand there and you could hear the dike break and you could hear the water coming in. And that's going to happen again.
And sorry, Mr. McGilvery, you said you're at the end of Rexdale?
Yes. Mr. Higgins.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
My apologies. And you can be assured that this committee will spend a lot of time discussing flood management, wastewater management with the applicant. The application, any application will be, if any application is approved, it is approved on the basis that it will not increase water for the neighboring
Okay,
properties.
what if
So
it
that-
does?
But that is what an engineer does, is they design a system. It's not.
I've lived there for 50 years, and
Yeah.
we've had 4 or at least 4, maybe 5 floods down there, and I've had more than 3 to 4 feet of water in my basement. And I just don't think that, unless they're going to do something with the river, I can't see it happening.
And this committee unfortunately won't be able to prevent your house from flooding.
Yeah.
But what this committee is charged to do is make sure that any development doesn't increase the risk that you already face.
Well, thank you very much.
So please understand that. Okay. Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Higgins, for your questions, and thank you for your service to the fire service. A question for either Director Fox or Director McKinnon. I'm not sure which. You two can fight over who wishes to answer the question. When we talk about not raising the driveways and the parking areas, and just in reference to the boats, and that is unfortunately before my time, or fortunately one or the other, would it make sense to have some of the driveways more elevated in order to increase the access for fire trucks or other emergency without having to bring in boats, or does it make sense to keep it lower? We will allow him to speak.
There's
eventually.
two issues. One, you're only allowed to put fill, when you're doing cut and fill for buildings, you're only allowed to do it for the buildings themselves, for the building footprint and a certain perimeter outside of the buildings. You're not allowed to do it for the driveways, and there's good reason to keep the driveways low. It's so that the floodwaters can recede when it's time for the floodwaters to recede. You wouldn't want all the driveways and parking lots built up, or then the water becomes trapped once it gets in there. And then when Ford Street neighborhood floods, the water will not recede.
Right, so this, what you're saying basically is it's not so much an access issue, it is a floodwater recession mitigation strategy.
Floodwater management, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, just, by the way, you're handling the mic system unbelievably well. This is the third meeting I've had with this mic system, and no one has done it better than tonight's chair. This is in regards to road building, et cetera. It is wet down there, and it's kind of spongy, and I hope you don't mind I walk that site. It was frozen as hard as rocks, so, but I know that in the summer, because I've been in that area in the summer, it is spongy and wet and stuff. And to build a road or a parking lot, you're going to have to bring in something that's more stable than that. So how does that all work? You know, you're going to have to remove some material and then put down some rock, et cetera, without building it up. That's what I'm imagining is going to happen. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. So you might see some trucks moving in with some fill off site, but they cannot be higher than it already is, so that water can move through across the property.
Mr. Higgins, we'll just ask you to get the microphone back.
I just have one
Oh.
question.
Okay, shout it nice and loud then.
Is, with this development, is that Rexdale Drive, is it going to go out to Marshland Drive? No, not at this time.
Not at all.
Not at this time.
So I think you'll recall Planner Fox had indicated that section of marshland cannot have an access road, cannot have a vehicle traffic.
Not at this time.
That's all we have.
I know.
Okay. Well, if there's no one else to provide any additional feedback to Mr. Chisholm, I think we'll leave this for now. We don't need a motion, so thank you, Mr. Chisholm.
Thank you.
Can I just say very quickly? And were being developed, I would have been developing it if I had money at the time. But just look at how Mr. Fox, Town Planning, Engineering, and Council of the Day put the pressure on, not pressure, worked with the developer, Ron Wallace, to develop in there. And I have lived down there all my life too, and I have not seen anything after that that affected other areas. The one where we had that big flood was when the logs came from Irving around that bend and smashed through. That's the big flood. And then, like I said, if you recommend to town council, it's time to look at dredging the river again in partnership with the county. We are going to save ourselves a lot of problems. And the town and the county caused a lot of what's going on down there when they built Marshland Drive, which choked the water off from going over to the other side. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But please, revisit how those two buildings were built and how they had to conform to the area. Because in my 60-some years of being down there, I have not seen anything different after, with those two apartment buildings being put in place. So, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tynes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chisholm. So we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is number 6, and it is 67 Inglis Place, owned by Factory 58 Holdings Incorporated. And this is an application at step 1 of the expanded process. And Planner Fox will present the application. And Mr. Cook, you're here for the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So everyone will be happy to hear there's no floodplain involved. All right. So yeah, this is 67 Inglis Place. It is also a development agreement application. And it is by Factory 58 Holdings Limited. And it was made on December 11th, 2024. It's for a mixed-use development proposal consisting of a 4-story building with 30 dwelling units, 1,088 square meters of street-level commercial space, and a parking area for 21 vehicles. This application is at, again, step 1, as was mentioned, we are looking at the property on the corner, or the block, essentially, formed by Inglis Place, Havelock Street, and Esplanade. It's the southern section of that block, so it's basically the parking lot of the former Margolian store. And the property is 67 Inglis Place. It's an existing parking lot. Property is about 0.37 acres, or about 1,486 square meters in area, and has approximately 48.8 meters of frontage on Esplanade, 24.4 meters of frontage on Inglis Place, and 34.1 meters of frontage on Havelock Street. This is just a panoramic photograph showing the site looking north from the Truro Center on Esplanade. Property, as I mentioned, is currently developed as a parking lot. It's a private parking lot for 43 vehicles. Site is entirely surfaced with asphalt, so anything that happens here can only be an improvement on stormwater management. The subject property is situated in the heart of Truro's Central Business District and occupies a high-profile corner at the intersection of Inglis Place and the Esplanade, which are two major shopping streets in the downtown. The area is characterized by traditional commercial architecture with 2- and 3-story buildings that are situated at the street with street-oriented commercial spaces, resulting in a welcoming and pedestrian-friendly streetscape. The notable exception, of course, is the Truro Center development, which is where this photo is taken from, across Esplanade to the south, which is a 1-story sort of shopping plaza-style development with parking in the front yard, so it's not that street-oriented retail space as much, say, as Inglis Place is. So land uses in the area consist of lands that are primarily commercial with office and professional uses, street-level retail uses, restaurants, things like that. There are a few residential uses on the upper floors of buildings in the area. Other nearby uses include large multi-unit uses multi-unit residential uses on Victoria and Forester Streets, which is just the one block to the west. So this is a excerpt from the town's policy area map showing that the property it's outlined in blue here, is in the downtown core policy area, entirely surrounded by downtown core policy area as well. Same story with the zoning, so it's a downtown core zone as well. This is apologize if it's going to be hard to see on here. It's a little bit clearer in the report perhaps, but this is the ground floor plan plus the sort of a site plan as well. So it shows the parking area and it shows this is the building here. The gray would show the existing structures. Havelock Street runs along the north side or the top of the screen. The right-hand side would be Esplanade and south is Inglis. And you can see what's being shown here is the parking area accessible off of Havelock Street. There's the residential lobby shown in this area here, access to an elevator into stairwell. And then here we have a commercial space which has frontage at street level onto Inglis Place, but also the corner on Esplanade. There is a covered terrace area here which is providing open access from it's at the ground level. So this ground area is open. So you have views from Esplanade through the site to the parking and onto the retail uses, the Grow and Brew over in this area here, and there's another further commercial space here as well. So it's an L-shaped building. It's a 4-story building, 30 dwelling units, and again, there's that 1,088 square meters of street-level commercial space. The interior of the block is where the parking is situated, so the parking is more or less hidden behind the building, with the exception of it's visible from Havelock Street. New retail space on Inglis Place and on the Esplanade. And there's also this covered terrace area here, which is about just over 200 square meters or 2,240 square feet of amenity space, which could be used by tenants of the building, but also by commercial tenants as well that may utilize the space. While the retail uses have direct access to the street, the dwelling units are all on the upper floors and are reached via a lobby that is accessed from the covered terrace, but more from the parking area. And detailed design elements have not been really finalized at this time, or at least at the time the report was written. I did get some renderings submitted on Friday, I believe, so those are not included in the report, but I do have those to show you here in a moment. In terms of the actual sort of typical floor plan of the building, we're looking, again, there's 30 units in total. 3 of them would be bachelors, so 1 bachelor per floor because it's a 4-story building, 3 floors residential. There's 15 one-bedroom units and 12 two-bedroom units. The site coverage is about 46.5%, but it's about 99% impermeable surface. The only real green space that's being shown is over here, little islands at the entrance to the parking lot. Proposal features a surface parking area for 21 vehicles, including 1 accessible stall. Parking ratio works out to be about 0.7 spaces per dwelling unit, although I believe the intent is that this would be reserved primarily for commercial uses. I'm not sure about that entirely, maybe a mix of both. Oh, okay. So for residential, and the units do not include balconies, but there is that, and there is no interior amenity space being proposed aside from that ground floor terrace area that's covered, which would be located here. This is just sort of an overview of how the floor structure is set up. So this is the ground floor here, showing the commercial spaces and the parking at the rear with the open terrace, covered terrace area in the ground floor, and then the 3 upper floors are the same layout each floor. So some of the renderings that came in, I mean, these are pretty high level, sort of early stage conceptual stuff, but this is showing the 4-story building with the street-oriented retail spaces, lots of permeability at grade, which is some of the policies we like to see from an urban design perspective. Also from an urban design perspective, it has it occupies it has a 0 lot line setback, so it's occupying the street, doing a good job framing the street, this all helps to create a pedestrian-friendly, active, sort of vibrant, vital retail environment, pedestrian-friendly environment, so happy to see that as well. The 4 floors, and again, there's some, I think, discussion about materials, but I believe it was metal siding was being proposed for this area here with brick at grade. This would all will have to go through the Heritage Committee as well, so they'll have a opportunity to comment on this as well. This is the proposal just showing sort of the transition from the existing be above the Take It Outside store, the old Margolians building, and the transition to the new building with the 4 floors, and how it's carrying on sort of that same street level retail space and at the same height, so they're keeping that consistent. We call these datum lines, where they're taking sort of inferences from existing patterns on the street and carrying them over into the new building. Just another detail showing some of the finished materials being proposed for the exterior. Another view here showing the view from the building from the intersection. It would be Esplanade and Havelock, looking west. And then you can see this would be the entrance. This would be that covered terrace area with the entrance to the parking lot, pedestrian entrance to the parking lot. This wouldn't be for vehicles, pedestrians only. And then you'd have this potential terrace space here, covered terrace space, which would get solar access because it is a south-facing space, so it may not be quite as dark and unwelcoming as the space might be when it's covered like this. And it does also provide through access to that parking area and retail space in behind as well. In terms of enabling policy, the policy that allows council to consider this is policy DC 74, which just says council consider multi-unit proposals in the downtown when it's over 12 dwelling units by development agreement. In terms of public participation, we'll be posting a sign on the property in the next few weeks. Information will be posted on the town's website under active development applications following this meeting. I believe it's already there, and there's a spelling error there, my apologies. A mailer will be sent out to property owners within 150 meters of the property. Again, this is subject to postal strike being resolved, but that would take place in the new year as well. So in terms of application status, again, we're at step 1. At today's meeting, the committee members would be expected to provide feedback to the developer regarding any potential concerns or issues. The applicant is expected to take these in consideration as they finalize their design, and then prior to the next meeting, we may hear back from the applicant may revise their proposal based on feedback from this committee, from staff. And in terms of next steps, we'll be looking at proceeding to a second meeting of the planning committee on January 27th. And then the third meeting of PAC would be February 24th, and that would be when we do our final report and recommendation. And then there's the public hearing, which would likely be March 3rd. The committee does also have the option of using the shorter process for this application because it is a fairly straightforward proposal, but there is some detailed architectural considerations, and also heritage would have to be considered as well. But that is an option the committee could potentially investigate further, is to say, to skip that month and go directly to a report and recommendation at next month's planning committee meeting. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Planner Fox. Before I hand the microphone over to other committee members, do you mind, just for the benefit of me and maybe others, confirming what you just ended with there, that we as a committee are we changing from the expanded to the standard, or are we just sort of reducing the expanded timelines?
You would be going from the I always get the names confused, but you'd be going from the expanded process to our standard process, which we typically never use the standard process, so it's
Right.
probably not the best name for it, but that is the shorter
Okay.
the shorter process for more straightforward development proposals.
Okay, in which case the committee would make a recommendation at our next meeting.
At the next meeting, and we would just move up all the public engagement and things like that, so it just happens a little bit faster. This committee would not necessarily benefit from the results of the public engagement survey, though. That way, it may only be available, given timing, may only be available at the council meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor McGrath, you are in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cook? First question for you, and maybe Ms. Delorier would be better suited to talk about this. You are aware that the Downtown Truro Partnership has been looking at the pedestrianization of Inglis Place, correct? Can we get his microphone on, Madam Chair? Oh, I think she has to, one of them has to, there we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Perfect. Do you have, obviously you're aware you then don't have any concerns with that pedestrianization plan and your development?
Well, I presented that to them, to the town as well, when I first bought the parking lot, that trying to maybe get the town to take over that parking lot, prevent this to be done for now, and that the parking, if they did downtown parking, kind of asking the question of where would they park? I don't know, because you're going to lose them on English Street as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that. I thought about it a lot, but it was something that the English Street pedestrian is not really in the queue yet. It's just a survey being done.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to put a hold up on what I was doing to wait for that to be done. But I understand you're going to lose a lot of parking spaces.
Yeah, because as Mr. Fox said, that currently it's 43 spots that are open to the public, and this is now going to be 21 spots reserved for the residents of the building, correct?
Yeah, that was one of the things I've asked the planners, Mr. Fox, was, you know, how they thought that this would affect parking in downtown, and I was assured that there's lots of parking downtown, and you like this, there's going to be a big bike storage spot there, a storage spot in the building with plugins for electric bikes, electric scooters. My goal is to promote less vehicles, more city living, more bikes, Victoria Park, kind of having a place where you don't feel the need to have a car. Yeah.
It's funny you knew that I was going to ask
I knew
that.
it.
I'm apparently
I thought
gaining
about
a
it long ago.
reputation.
But I think the same thing. It'd be cool if there was a good bike storage spot there. People didn't feel the need for a car, and yeah.
Well, and it would, and this is really when we talk about the pedestrianization, I mentioned it in the previous, development application, it's a short distance to shopping and to the groceries. We want to be able to encourage that, especially
Well, the bank's
downtown.
there, the shops are there, everything's there. You don't really need to leave.
Yeah,
That's not-
well, I'm a big fan of English
Except to go to
Place. You don't
Victoria
need
Park.
to sell me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad you answered that. So with regards to, you answered about the bicycle storage, I assume you're going to have some room for waste collection, and that the thought about waste collection has been brought up, because I hear from a lot of people, the trucks are showing up at 4:30 in the morning. There's going to be sufficient room and somewhere for the trucks to be able to access.
Yeah.
And Mr. Fox is going to help us out here.
There it is.
Okay, so that's mechanical waste resident storage. How does the garbage truck get to there? Come down through the middle to be able to access, I
Just
assume?
go to the parking lot.
Yep. Okay, so then they're then off the road as well when they're doing this. Beautiful. While we're on this slide, the commercial space there of 2,699 square feet. In the land use bylaws, there should be a loading bay specified for anything, I believe, over 2,476 square feet. Are there any concerns about loading or unloading? Again, that's something I hear about as a counselor for a lot of that downtown area.
I haven't thought about it, to be honest with you. I haven't, having businesses down there and seeing what goes on, there's not, I don't know, I haven't seen much demand for like a full-on loading dock, but
Okay.
maybe it's something I could put in.
Something to think about. It may
Yeah, for
depend
sure.
on which businesses are in there. Like
Yeah.
I know, for example, some of the businesses have the couriers will come around on parking lots in the back on Havelock or on Forester, and then just come through the alleyways. But just something food for thought, which is why we are here.
Yeah.
The one accessible parking space, and I'm no engineer, one of the concerns I have, especially the province is pushing accessibility hard, and they want all the government buildings to be accessible by 2030. I think that needs to be rolled out everywhere. Is there a possibility of squeezing in an additional accessible space there somehow?
Yeah, I think we're above, have more parking spots in bylaw even asked for. I think there's no reason why I could add another one.
Yeah, I mean, by my count, and I may be wrong, 39 beds, 30 units comes out to 18 spaces, and you have 21, so you're above the requirements. I'm just looking mostly at the accessible parking.
I will say though, watching the parking lot of the Margolians every day, all day, the accessible I mean, I realize that you want to, I feel like one is going to be adequate. I watch the ones at Margolians parking lot, they don't really get used ever.
Okay.
Or that often, but I feel like one will be adequate, but if you need two, then we'll do two.
I think if the pedestrianization of Inglis Place
Yeah.
goes through, I know some folks who have said, "Oh, I'm looking forward to shopping on Inglis again."
That parking will be for the building though, not for the pedestrianization.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair point. Still something to consider.
No, for sure.
The makeup of the units, is this going to be rentals or is this going to be an opportunity for folks to purchase?
No, rentals.
All rentals.
And again, with CMHC funding and all that, there'll be affordable units in it.
Brilliant. That was my next question.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the affordable units.
Yeah, they require 10% of it, so there will be 10% affordable units. But also, my angle was you're going to get a discounted rent as well if you don't have a vehicle.
Excellent.
Yes, and I'm able to. I believe with the way the funding is rolled out, I'm able to go a little bit under market value on the apartments as well. So I'm
Okay.
trying to. So, I mean, it all comes down to a feasibility thing, but I'm trying to do that.
Excellent. Back to accessibility for a moment. Are any of the units planned to be accessible? And I don't just mean a wide enough door to fit a wheelchair or a scooter through. Is it going to be accessible, like with roll-in showers, lowered sinks or cupboards, things?
Haven't made it that far yet.
Haven't made that.
There'll be an elevator in the building, obviously, but I haven't made it that far with the other stuff.
Okay, something, and again, with the push for accessibility, I think it's something to be.
Yeah, I deal with it all the time in the other buildings.
Yeah, well, especially with, I look around this building and some of the hoops we've had to jump through, try to make this more accessible. With a new build, you've got a blank slate to work with.
No, for sure.
Make it a lot easier for you.
Yeah, it's not hard to do, for sure.
And then just again, we still have that slide up, thankfully. Is there any sort of barrier between the end of the parking spaces there and the building itself? Like I'm thinking like bollards, planters, or anything of that nature.
Well, there's supposed to be some green space on the would be the north and south side of the breezeway, and out front as well. Yeah, there's a picture of the breezeway there with some trees there. That one, and then just those. Nothing crazy. There's not a lot of room for it.
Yeah, not so much the green space. If we could go back, Mr. Fox, to the one that shows the cars in the spaces.
Oh, there.
One more. There you go. Just thinking, what is stopping, say, car number 17 or car number 14 from parking right up against the building?
There'll be something there.
Right,
There is a plan we had that strip was all grass.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know where it went, but it's not here now, but they're in the plans that was there, that was supposed to be grass.
Well, when we're thinking pedestrianization and accessibility, we want to make sure that people aren't blocking that area with vehicles and I've seen stranger trying to drive, say if number 17 wanted to try to drive through that covered terrace. And especially on the other side to the Grow and Brew, spots 3 and 4 there, you don't want people
But it was a
blocking.
shortcut.
You don't want people blocking the
Yeah,
doors.
no, that's right.
Thank you. No more questions. Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
I was just going to suggest that, we're losing all these great parking spots. You know what might ease it a little bit? A public washroom.
Sure.
Oh.
Do it.
I've only been trying to get a public washroom downtown for 5 years now.
Well, I'll collaborate with the downtown Truro and we'll try and get one done then.
Just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah.
But, it is the only reason people leave our downtown often is
Nowhere
not
to use the washroom.
nowhere to use
Yeah.
the washroom.
Yeah.
And I bet you one would go great under that breezeway.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can see
Yeah, I've got it all figured out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not out of the question.
It's in no way dependent on
No,
your
I know.
application, but I just thought it would be a good idea.
Okay, I like it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's an excellent idea.
It is.
Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'd like to talk a little bit about parking. I know that you meet the criteria for the zoning. You exceed it, actually. It's like 17.2, and I think it was 21,
Yeah.
right? And just by chance, I was down there this afternoon around noon, looking for a parking spot, trying to go to a restaurant on Prince Street. There was no parking on Prince Street. There was no parking on English Street. There was no parking on the Esplanade, zero. And but your parking lot had 11 parking spots,
Yeah.
but there was 29 filled. And so fortunately, there was 11 there, so plenty of room for me to park. But even the farmer's market, the outdoor farmer's market, what used to be the outdoors farmer's market,
Yeah.
completely filled, right? There was no parking. And so my question is will those parking spots be dedicated to the tenants only and not available commercially?
You gotta remember, it's Christmas shopping right now.
I know, I understand that, but also English Street was filled too.
Yeah.
So, listen, people don't like it when I bring up parking all the time,
Yeah.
right? But I bring it up all the time because, I think we're headed down to we have an issue with parking downtown. That's what I believe. I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong. I absolutely pray and hope I'm wrong, but it concerns me. Right?
It would be for the
So,
tenants.
but you meet all the criteria,
Yeah.
and it was all approved by council. So, there's nothing I can say to you.
Yeah, it's the-
It's good.
Sitting my office overlooks the parking downtown, right? So I look at it every day. When I put paid parking in for a few months, that parking lot was empty. They were finding a place to park.
Right.
And I did that just trying to be curb having to develop that anytime. Maybe it could service the debt a bit on it for a while and not have to do it, but it wasn't received very well.
Right.
And the Ken Eisner hated me because everybody was going to the Esplanade to park. The farmer's market parking, it's empty after 5 or 6 o'clock.
Right.
During the day, there's a lot of people use that are working at banks and local businesses.
Right.
So
So there's a timing issue, and
It's a
I'll
timing issue.
absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, it's-
Because your tenants will be arriving back at 5 when people
Exactly.
from the
So-
business district are leaving at 5.
Exactly.
So, I
That's
mean,
one thing. Right now-
that'll reduce a lot of stress.
Yeah, Christmas
Absolutely.
time downtown's always so crazy.
And Christmas, it is
Yeah,
Christmas
it's
time.
crazy down
Today
there.
is
It
Christmas
sucks,
time. Absolutely.
So, there will have to be a compromise 1 month out of the year, maybe, where there'll be no parking downtown. But
Right.
hopefully it doesn't deter people from coming down and shopping. It's my scare because I obviously have 24 commercial tenants in those two
Right.
buildings that I want to thrive and make sure people come and
Absolutely.
shop there.
Right.
So that was always been my fear of disrupting parking downtown.
Right.
And I don't think in the grand scheme of things it will. I think that the building will bring people downtown because it's going to be pretty cool.
Right.
And that'll add more of a city vibe down there.
Right, well, absolutely. I love the idea of developing that corner.
Yeah, cool.
I just have some concerns about
Yeah,
parking,
yeah,
that's all.
same, me
And you have
too.
the same concerns,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm also concerned about that covered terrace. I'll tell you why, because I think it's an opportunity for loitering. And in reality, I'd love to see it, you know, those tables there and people go to a nearby restaurant, take their food there, enjoy the sunshine,
Yep.
have something to eat. But I hate to say it, Council, you put in a public washroom there, and I think it's an opportunity for loitering. I think that you're going to have and I'd like the planner to just comment on that. Is that something that you're concerned about at all, is having loitering over a covered, remember, it's covered out of the weather.
Not going to be a planning issue that we should be really spending a whole lot of time talking about at this stage.
I see.
But as far
Well, the building's being designed, so
right.
I think it's fair.
It really comes down to how the space is programmed. So it depends what's next to it. Depends if it's an unwelcoming, desolate expanse of concrete. Then yeah, it'll probably encourage loitering. If it's programmed and used by the adjacent businesses and it's landscaped appropriately, has outdoor seating and amenities, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And maintenance is another key issue with that. If
I
it's
also have
maintained-
people, tenants that watch over that stuff for me.
Right.
And it's nothing for them to walk out and say, hey, like, if you're not, no
Right.
loitering. It happens all the time, to be honest with you. So out back of the building, out back of the McGowan's building more than we'd like to happen. You kind of have to go, say, you have to find somewhere else. So just be policing a bit. And there is officers that walk the beat there quite a bit as well. So
Right.
it's actually it's a good way to think of it, but I don't think in the grand scheme of things it'd be that much of an issue.
Right. And the last thing is, when it comes to that, I see you rounded the corners, which is great on the street, you know, right?
Yep.
That major corner. And I'd like you to consider maybe rounding the corners going into that because people get nervous about, you come to a corner and you don't know who's in there. It's
Yeah.
going to come out at you. If it's rounded, there's less chances,
Yep.
greater visibility and less chance of you feeling as though someone's hiding there. That's
Also-
important to a lot of people in the town.
Yeah,
When
for-
they're
oh, no, for
walking
sure.
down, the streets are dark and they're wondering who's there.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
I'm 6'6", 230 pounds.
You don't
Doesn't
worry.
affect me as much as maybe somebody else,
Yeah.
but, right, it's a concern for people.
There's also going to be hopefully a rooftop patio for the tenants. So you're saying there's no porches? Yeah, so we're going to do a rooftop patio, hopefully above on the Inglis Esplanade section. And part of it being for public as well, with maybe something up there. So for the tenants and public use.
And the last one is for you, Mr. Fox. We normally go 3 stories, well, not normally, but, you know, it's zoned, you know, the bylaw says, I think it says, and correct me if I'm wrong, 3 stories and set back to 4. And so this is just straight 4. It looks as though when you look at the properties beside it, maybe they were built with a 10-foot or 11-foot or whatever interior space, and so it matches quite well with 4 stories. Is that the case? And so we don't have to be as concerned?
Right. I think this diagram that was provided by the applicant certainly illustrates that it is in fitting with the street wall. It doesn't stick out. It's not so significantly higher than what's around it that it stands out. So I like it for that reason, and I would be prepared to support a waiver of our normal setback for the for the 4th floor.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, the idea is also to morph it into the history of the street, right? So I wanted to match the old buildings. Can't just put a modern building next to a 200-year-old building. So we're trying to kind of morph everything together to make it look kind of cool. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Delorier.
I know everybody wants to hear from me. To respond to you, Councillor McGrath, I cannot give you an answer right now until we get the results back from that study. This is something definitely will have to go to my consultants on the loss of those parking spots. We just have to remember that right now it's a private parking, it's paid parking, so it's not necessarily public.
Not paid anymore.
Oh.
I took it out. Yeah.
Well, definitely retract my comment. The rendering looks promising. I would like to see more information about this and how it will develop and the commercial space that it will come in here. And the heritage and material, absolutely, it will have to blend in with English. As you all are very well aware, we have plans in the making to try to make English pedestrian only. So I do feel that this could be a good addition to that. And yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, obviously, I have invested interest in downtown as well, so I want to make downtown
Yeah.
better, make it vibrant, make it really cool. It's got to be a destination, so I'm with you guys on that stuff. We all benefit from it.
yeah, absolutely. And like the doors of the Downtown Truro Partnership are always open. If you have any questions and regarding the plans that we have for that,
Yeah.
you're more than welcome.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's anyone else who wishes to bring anything forward at this meeting, I think we'll leave it for today and see you at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
I guess, sorry, before I let you go, Mr. Cook, the one thing we didn't decide on, and nobody sort of spoke about, was whether we want to shorten the process. And just a reminder, Planner Fox said that may mean that we wouldn't be able to receive the public feedback. So is there anyone who wishes to diverge from what we would be doing, which would be the expanded process, and move to the shortened standard process? Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fox, what again was the reasoning behind going to the shorter process? You said it was basically just because it's a straightforward development, thankfully not on a floodplain. Can you just expand on that?
That's typically when we would use it. If it's an application where you don't anticipate a lot of public opposition or there's a lot of concerns around design elements, then you would look to go through a shorter process to basically save the developer and the committee and everybody a lot of time. But it doesn't get used often. I'm trying to remember the last time we used it. Usually we reserve it for spots that are, like if it's an existing structure that's being repurposed and they're not building a new building, that's when it would often get used because there's no real change to the urban environment as a result of the development. So it may not be appropriate in this case, but I did want to make sure that you're aware that that is an option that's available. It hasn't been requested by the applicant or anything like that either, but just wanted you to know that it was there.
Okay, and then the concern over the public feedback, is that mostly about the Canada Post strike and the mail-outs not going out?
There's no concern. It's just a matter of the way the timing works with the shorter process is the mail-out survey results, or the online survey results that we do. You may not get those back depending on the timing for this committee's deliberations. They may only be available for council's consideration. Just the way the timing works out, sometimes it doesn't come back in time for us to present them to this group.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we can just ask the developer, do you have a strong preference? Are you on a tight timeline, or is a few weeks here and there pushing you into the spring gonna, or I guess into early March? Would that be?
Whatever works. Yeah, the sooner the better, but I'd like everybody, but whatever works for you guys, I'm fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't really come to the gallery. Just for the security underneath the covered terrace, have you looked at adding cameras or anything underneath there?
I put cameras on everything.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, because it wasn't mentioned. I know we talked about it with bathrooms and everything like that.
Yeah.
Where the tunnel going by engine room is actually locked at certain hours, so I wanted to make sure that was, because it's definitely a big concern.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Try put them on everywhere.
Perfect.
There's always some stuff happens down there.
That is so true. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I think we'll just leave you on the expanded process then. So then we will see you for step 2 at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Okay, to finish up the evening, we will ask Mr. Grant to come back to the microphone and speak to whether the applicant for the Juniper Street, 60 Juniper Street application wishes to proceed with asking for a deferral or otherwise.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee. I just want to say thanks for allowing us to take some time to have a discussion there. I appreciate it. It's a little unusual, but certainly appreciate the time. What we'd like to do again is come back and ask for the process to essentially be paused. The reason that we're doing that is what we've heard tonight and what we've heard from community is that it seems like the core issue is looking at engagement and discussing with community over the potential for what the site holds. And we'd like to do that. We're very open to doing that. We're open to making changes. We're open to looking at public space on the site and what that might hold for community. But ultimately, what we're suggesting is that we need to meet with community and have those discussions, have those conversations on really what the community wants before we decide whether or not the application would be changed so substantially as to require a reapplication. So essentially what we're asking of the committee this evening is to please pause the process, enable us to have those discussions, and then we'll have a conversation with staff after we've had those discussions on whether or not it's a requirement to actually do the full reapplication or if we could continue with the process. I think it ultimately really depends on what community tells us they'd like to do, and we just want to have an opportunity to hear that first. Yeah, I think that's really ultimately what we'd like to do. And we just ask the committee's indulgence in that.
Thank you. Planner Connolly, do you have, in terms of, like Mr. Grant is speaking about the fact that, they would like an opportunity to speak with you and with the community and to see whether the changes to the application are so substantive as to send them back to sort of the beginning, which I think was what Planner Fox had alluded to and suggested maybe why a reapplication a new application would be more appropriate. Can you speak to whether you think that the changes required are so significant that they should reapply? Because what I'm hearing is that we might get to our next meeting and then have to send you back to step one. And so we would really just be delaying your process from what I can see possibly.
I'm not sure. It's the possibilities are wide open right now. So who knows what the developer may come back with after consultation with the community. Maybe they could come to some kind of agreement that the slight changes to maybe the aesthetic presentation of the building with the incorporation of some community space may make it more palatable to the community. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's just a full stop, no, the results from the consultation just may be totally to the negative. I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to prejudge that. I'm not sure. I've had some conversation, but certainly not exhaustive conversations with community members on this application. It's up to the committee, honestly. I'm not sure.
Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on the feedback from Ms. Connolly and Mr. Fox, the potential for substantive changes here, and no offense, sir, but I'm willing to either see a withdrawal or a rejection of this application and see it start from the beginning, just because there may be such substantive changes. I also don't know when this is going to happen, all of this, community engagement. That may also take some time, but I think starting from scratch is probably our best option, my opinion. Thank you.
May I speak to that, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So we'd be looking to do the community engagement as soon as it works. Like for community, we'd reach out and find out what time works. We don't want to delay. We want to do that relatively quickly. But I do think that there's some value in seeing where this goes. We don't know what the community wants, and we'd like to at least hear and have that discussion before we potentially make any decision on withdrawing and restarting.
Hi, as someone that's part of the working committee for my community, we've met pretty much almost every other week. We had our 2 engagement sessions with you guys that one day, as per you guys' request to them, the developers, to do with us. None of the changes that we had suggested at that time or communicated with you guys has really been made, except for the movement of the parking coming out. That was the only thing that we came out with. Nothing was talked about sinking it or like making it shorter. So for us, for the community, like we agree that we need to talk some more with the developer, maybe move past this one. I would say come back to the drawing board and let us go from there, because we've done a lot of work as a community. We've had a lot of seniors come out every other week, missing church events and everything, and we had to reschedule our schedules. I have a daughter at home. We've done a lot of our own work. We did a rally and a support for our community itself and a march. So we've done a lot on our end to bring awareness to this. So that's my point.
Thank you. Do you mind sharing your name?
Rhea.
Thank you, Rhea.
Wayne Talbot again. I don't have any insider information, but listen to the planner speaking. I got the impression that the concerns were broader than just the community concerns. So I'd like to understand that better before you take a decision. I understand and I'll just rephrase that. I think there's some things that the planners don't see as a good fit at this point. So I just like to understand if I'm on the right track.
You go ahead and introduce yourself, please, and then I'm going to let Councillor Thomas speak.
Joanne Jordan, I'm a community member. So I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question because I was curious too. Is there something from the planning perspective when it comes to the water that this development was going to have a negative impact upon?
Mr. McKinnon, I made your mic live if you want to speak.
I'm not sure what they had in the report, but we've already looked at the stormwater management plan, and it seems to be fine. So, like, from the
Okay,
technical aspects of the stormwater management, you know, it's all they can do is improve the site, because right now it's all asphalt and all below grade, so all they can do is make improvements.
Right. So what I was actually happy to hear you say that. A picture is worth 1,000 words. It could speak way more than I can share tonight. I would invite members of this PAC, come on up West Prince Street and take a look at the water that has accumulated on the back of these residences as a result of the diamond that was, all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed. But where'd all this water come from? So this is a development that happened that was sanctioned. It was, you know, the wastewater management and the P21s, whatever you're talking about, was all, you know, this, I can assure you that it's not going to result in flood. Come up, please, and take a look at, I was aghast when I saw that. I was aghast. I could not believe it. I talked to Rhea. Rhea said, Joanne, you got to come see this. I said, send me a picture. She said, no, come. My mouth fell open. Please go take a look, because if there was any ounce in that report that suggested that this development would have an impact on the water, good night. Good luck to all of us. It's flooded. It's awful.
I'm not sure.
I also want to add one thing. The gentleman here was saying about seeing what the community wants. Well, the last engagement that we had, I don't think they took it serious. Because when we went in there, they had one individual standing there with a flip chart, one standing there, and one standing there. And it wasn't for Drew Clark, well, my name's Kevin Jackson, by the way, to come in and say, look, this is not how we want this setting. So all our concerns was addressed there. Now that your back's against the wall, now you want to say, well, you want to see what community wants. You had your chance, you had your opportunity, you didn't take it serious. You know, we have more intelligence than you think, right? So for you to sit there and say, well, you want to see what community wants. If you think that offering a room for community for use is going to change our mind and how we feel, you're wrong.
Councillor Thomas?
Yowzers. Joanne, as far as as far as the field goes, council is very aware of the water that's accumulated in those ponds and how deep they are, and the concern of the community about those. And the town, as far as I know, and council's concerned about it, and has believed they found a solution, and that solution will be applied. That's my understanding.
I understand that as well, Bill.
And
what I'm saying is if another development goes in.
I completely understand your concern. You know, you kind of lose credibility when they say this and then something else happens.
You said, I'm no engineer. You said, so
Yeah.
my nod to the professionals. And so did I until I saw that.
Right, okay, yeah. So it's a concern, but it will be addressed one way or the other. And, you know, your counselor, Mr. Talbot, is on to this and insistent that it be done. And I stand with him that something be done to solve it. Not just a patch job, but a real solution that the community can feel safe about, right? So, and so when it comes to this project, though, I'll speak against what my fellow councillor spoke to. I would like to see the process continue. I'd like to see whether or not they can find a solution. If they come back with something that's so different, and I hope you do, then we can say, okay, it's so different that we need more time to consider it. But, I'm always for dialogue and talk. And if you get together with the community, and I was at that meeting, and I agree with you, sir, it was kind of us and them. It can't be that way if you're going to find a solution. You have to sit down together and work together to find a solution. It can't be, we're going to tell you what we're going to do. And then you sit there and listen, and you give us, no, you got to sit down and work through this. And if you can do that, then I think you can move forward with it and come back with an agreement. And that's what I'd like to see, because, starting again doesn't make sense to me, because I think you want to put a residential building there. You don't want to put a gas station. You want to put a residential building there. It's just a matter of what it looks like, how big it is, and whether the community can live with it, and whether or not it is so so large and they just feel it dominates their community. They don't want that. That's what I understand, and I think that you can work with them to achieve something. That's, it's always a matter of negotiation, give and take, Your community has to give some, they have to give some, obviously. You're not happy with it, and we have policies that require that there not be this kind of consternation between groups, right? You need to find a solution.
Why not just build it somewhere else?
Amen.
Yeah, well,
What's the issue with that?
well, they have the right to develop their land, sir.
He also owns a bunch of other land too.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's his decision. That's his decision, and then it's this decision of this body and council whether or not we turn it down. Yeah, okay, well, I'll end my comments there. I'll give it back to the chair.
Excuse me, if I could just speak to the gallery, please. Excuse me. We're going to wait for the microphone, please. We're going to remain.
I know it's getting late.
Thank you.
You guys got to go home and get your rest, and all that stuff. Let me say one more thing. I'm looking around, and even on the street, I can remember back when we were kids. Grandmother telling stories of my mother and them. That property, and where we're living, right up to Willow Street, Golf Street, Smith Avenue, that was, and behind where I live, next to the golf course, there's ponds and water. We used to go Blueberry, they got the track there. That was all swamp, and it's always going to be swamp. It was when we were kids, it was a cow pasture behind where the golf course is now. Years ago, from where we're living to Willow Street down to Queen Street, actually, that was all black community. But you know what happened? In those days, the people had no money to try to protect themselves, and they got the property for nothing. Nothing. Because I can prove it, for the property that I'm on now is from my great-grandparents. And when I took it over and looked the deed up, I thought that I had more than I did. But I realized that the town must have approached my grandparents, which had a farm, my child. They bought it for less than $100 from them because they didn't need the money, and that's how it came about. And that's what happened to West Prince Street, and it's still going to be West Prince Street. Now, these young people, and even some here, don't remember what I remember, because I'm the oldest one almost up there. I can go back to when I'm 8 years old, when all we had was lamps, had no lights or nothing. And that's going way back. You don't understand the struggle that we had all our life. Please give us a break. I don't know how some of you can go to bed and go to sleep at nights.
Councillor Graham?
I'm inclined to deny the request for the deferral. I'm wondering, though, does that mean that the applicant continues through the process? Sorry?
I think, Councillor Graham, we had discussed, which was why we gave them the opportunity to meet, whether they wished to withdraw their application. If they don't wish to withdraw the application, it would proceed with our presumably with our recommendation to deny the application.
Okay.
And then it would go forward to the fifth.
So we
fourth
will
step.
be entertaining 2 votes presumably tonight. One to either accept or deny the deferral. Then the second one would be to refer it to council with the staff, with either approval or not of the staff recommendation. I just want to be clear of the process before I make my final decisions.
Yeah, and I think the way I see it would be that we have an opportunity to deny the request for the deferral,
Yeah.
at which point the applicant would, I think, have, you know, I mean, they could withdraw the application immediately. They could withdraw the application after tonight's meeting. If they didn't withdraw it immediately, we would have to, you're right, make a recommendation based on the report we've been provided, because it would, if we denied the deferral, it would proceed.
Will we have to make that decision this evening?
If we do not accept their request for a deferral, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Langell?
Excuse me if I missed this previously, but have we made any deferrals in the past for any other applications?
Yeah, no, we have in the past had deferrals, but usually not at this stage of the development process.
Can I ask a question? So to what benefit is the deferral versus going back to the drawing board and starting from scratch? Deferral just means you kind of tweak up what you have. Like, what's the benefit for you to defer?
Are you asking the applicant directly?
I don't know. Can I? Yeah, I'm asking, yeah.
Yeah, happy to respond. Essentially, it's that when we come back and have a conversation with community without knowing exactly what community might want or what solution we could find on the site, there might not be necessary to actually fully withdraw the application. It's more of really a procedural matter that staff would have to just determine if there's enough change. So we're willing to do that. If we need to go back to the drawing board, we will, but we'd just like to try first to see what the conversation's like, and then if that's how we have to go, then we'll do it, but we just want to have that conversation first, essentially.
Right, so, yeah, I think I've been at every community meeting regarding this, and I feel as if we have expressed quite clearly what it is that we want/don't want. And to Ms. Graham's point, what is critical as we move forward is relationship with community. And right now, I don't know that that is tight. And you might be better off going back and starting from the beginning, because there's a lot of emotion attached here. I don't know if, well, you wouldn't know, but there's a lot. We are fighting to preserve our community. We've lost 2 already. We've saw what's happened to Africville. We're fighting to preserve our future for our children, my grandchildren. It's a big deal to us, right? This is just the tip of the iceberg for you all. You put a development there, great. I'm not anti-development. If it wasn't for development, I wouldn't be living on my son's property right now. We are not anti-development. I'm all about it. But it's about what's going to work for us as a community moving forward as well. Tip of the iceberg. You all put a development there, then it's Candace to the left of me, Candace to the right of me. The next thing you know, we're all enclosed in by development. That's what we don't want. We've made that quite clear. So if you all want to try for your deferral, I don't know. But to Alice's point again, my opinion, and like I can't speak for the whole community, but I don't feel there's a relationship there right now.
And for me, I still have to understand, like, deferral is one thing, and if all the issues are community issues, and you want to have that conversation, that's one thing. But I was getting the impression that there are issues from a planning perspective as well. So what good is going to the community to solve some issues if you still have issues with the planning department? And I haven't got an answer to that question yet.
And certainly the Planner Connolly and Planner Fox can speak to this probably better than I can, but I think Councillor Thomas summarized it fairly well at the beginning of the meeting, where he said, really, this is an issue of whether the development fits with the community. And I think that is, I don't think this committee has the same concerns. Again, I'm speaking broadly for everyone, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the committee shares the level of concern with water, mainly because this site is currently completely impermeable. So if it was a situation where this was an open field and it was being covered up by asphalt, I think we would feel differently. Traffic, I think, is a concern, and traffic flow, which we've heard from Mr. Grant tonight, is being addressed. So we will hold the developer to task on that. So I think there are still issues, and size and scale may be one of them, which was why we've asked them to provide us with something which shows what the development will look like from different perspectives on the ground. But aside from that, unless other members of the committee have direct issues with the development, I think those are what we're really sending the applicant back with. But I'll let.
And what's missing, and I'm going to be quite brutal here, is the lived experience. There's no one on that committee that can speak to lived experience of the black people living on West Front Street. And the psychological, long-term psychological impact of racism. We were put on the worst line in Truro, and it happened right across the province.
Yep.
And as things get better and the town grew out to us, now these things are happening. And with all due respect, and I don't mean this in any harmful way, that lack of lived experience is really going to impair your ability to make a fair decision. That's my opinion.
We do hear that. We do understand that. We are trying our best. So, thank you. We're here to listen. Councillor Graham?
If the committee is open to it, I'd like to make a motion to deny the applicant's wishes to defer the application at this time.
Seconded by Ms. Deloria. Is there further discussion? Would someone like, Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree that I think we should defer. I know Councillor Thomas said he would like to see the process go forward, but he also said, I hope they come back with something substantive. So in that regard, wouldn't we want to just deny that deferral anyway? Great.
Does
Well,
someone mind
a
just
vote.
calling for the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, that motion was already before the committee here because the town brought that in today. It said that council not enter into development agreement, but to permit this 5-story multi-unit residential development consisting of up to, they brought that motion. And so, we just vote on that motion, but I'm happy to vote on your motion instead, but the motion was brought by the town, I believe. So at any rate, I'm not trying to confuse things, but that,
Yeah,
in essence, that's what's happened tonight, is that we've been asked to, the town planner made a recommendation not to, and so that's before us anyways, and so we should vote on that, and I'm happy to vote on that.
Okay, I think part and parcel with that is to deny the deny the request for a deferral. I think staff report provided us with a recommendation to deny the report.
To it, and not, have a deferral, right? Denied it and not have a deferral. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Graham. We're going to treat the motion as you voiced it, which is that you have moved that the committee deny the request for a deferral by the applicant, and that motion has been seconded. I would ask the committee to vote on it, please. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any contrary minded signify by saying nay. Thank you. Don't think we had any abstentions. So that motion is carried. So the request for deferral has been denied by the committee. Unless there's anything further from the applicant, we will now move to vote on the staff recommendation.
recommendation for us before we? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. So the recommendation from staff was that council not enter into a development agreement with 4505243 Nova Scotia Limited to permit a 5-story multi-unit residential development consisting of up to 52 dwelling units. I think I heard Councillor McGrath's second first. I will pass the microphone over to Councillor Thomas for discussion.
Oh, I'm just want to call the question, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of the staff recommendation to deny the application, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Anybody opposed to the motion, signify by saying nay. I think that was everybody, so that is unanimous motion. Thank you. Okay, if there is no further, sorry, would you still like to speak? No? Okay. If there's no further business to come before the committee, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank
Sorry,
you.
I do have one item.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
It's okay.
I thought you were adjourning.
Adjournment denied.
Sorry, have the consultation start at 5 o'clock and then move into a PAC meeting at 6:30 would be my suggestion. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah?
Do you want us there?
Yes, you should, pardon me? It's the regular meeting of our regular monthly meeting for PAC. So it's the last Monday in January, the 27th or 6th, something like that? 27th. But yeah, I'd be looking for us to have the committee members in attendance. I see it as an open house style event where the amendments are presented and people can come and see them and ask questions. So you can be there at any time during that period. You don't have to be here for the whole time, but towards the end, then we would just go into our regular meeting at 6:30. Okay?
And can the calendar event be amended for us? Okay. Thank you. Councillor McGrath?
Oh, nope.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Thank you. I will adjourn this meeting at 8:22. Thank you.